the invite. I've come to talk about our grants programme, to think it's achievable or there's something in it, but I'm also interested in hearing from yourselves about your experiences and that type of thing. This is potentially quite timely because when I've talked about giving grants out for the Hospital of God is hard work. We have a very small grants pot, it's about £90,000 to £100,000 a year, and it's not, our main work is with older people and people living with dementia and social care and all that types of business. So the grants is a very tiny part of it. We don't have like a specialist grants person or anything like that, so it kind of comes down to a bit of me and a bit of some of the others that can come out, but that's it really. Our process is quite tiny. So just beginning, we'll send contact details, but if you check out the website, our website's okay, has some information, when again it'll get updated at some point, but it's there. Shortly you should be able to access the grants via the website, because it'll be an online thing. Fingers crossed, touch wood. Quick bit of information, so we make grants to, the Hospital of God's a charity and it's donkeys years old, 746 years old, which is quite surprising sometimes when you think a lot of charities are really young, you know, struggling for sustainability, 10, 20 years old, barely started, and the Hospital of God's 746 years old, which is quite mind-blowing sometimes, I think. But we're a charity. We give to charitable, not-for-profit, voluntary community organisations, so standard stuff really. The remit is across the northeast, so it's this side of the Tees up to the Tweed really, so that's the area we cover. On the eastern side, I don't know where the Cumbria boundary is actually, but on that eastern side, so it's quite a broad reach. We've added another little special consideration to where the Hospital of God operates, because Hospital of God is a Hartlepool charity based in Hartlepool. We work in Hartlepool and across East Durham, Seaham, Horden, Wheatley Hill and things like that, so we're kind of from this neck of the woods. Well, we are from this neck of the woods, and Stockton, actually work in Stockton as well. So we've said specifically that special consideration will be given. And it would be great to give long-term commitments to funding, but it's really difficult. We have a small pot, and if we give 10 organisations £3,000 a year for the next 3 years, that's a third of our pot gone for the next 3 years. That's what, 30 grand. So that's only 10 organisations, so it's really difficult. We have limitations. We don't. The money comes from wherever the money comes from, really. So it's we have to manage that very carefully. We know that the comfort of having 2 years or 3 years funding is much better than, it's nice when you get a cheque for 1 year, it's nice when you get a cheque for 3 years. We won't fund capital works, we won't fund building new buildings, even repairs and things like that. We get like bog standard fundraising things, you know, that we're part of a national funding, blah blah blah, so we won't do that. We won't just fund appeals. Not statutory projects. Schools doing school trips out, very questionable. Youth organisations doing trips out for young carers, totally different because the outcomes are different. You know, it's about that. Don't fund individual holidays for people. We don't, as a rule, fund national organisations, but there's that caveat it's independently constituted. So if it's the trustees who make the decisions, they don't always have the full experience of the sector. So when we get applications from organisations like CAB or Mind, people go, well, they're a national organisation. We'll say, well, actually they're individually constituted and that stuff. So we have those things. We don't normally fund conferences or feasibility studies. Probably an interesting one moving forward. We don't fund medical equipment and, like I said, general appeals. Is that alright? That's what we don't fund. So in terms of aims, which is the most important bit really, it's about us empowering local communities. So it's trying to be bottom up, grassroots, people that find solutions to the things on their doorsteps. So that's where we really need to be aiming. And for me, it's funny being when you apply for grants, people talk about woe is me, isn't life hard, and that's what we've been conditioned to doing, really. We talk about the indices of multiple deprivation and the worst 10% wards and everything, but the nod is everybody else does that, so it's really difficult to everybody does that, and it's like, and there needs to be some reference to that, absolutely, but that's just the beginning. What we want to be looking at is at things that are building on people's strengths and their assets, because there's so much knowledge in the room about the issues that people are facing on the doorstep, and you kind of need to celebrate that or recognise that in yourselves and think, actually, we do a bloody good job. And what I know about the North East communities, whether it's Redcar or Middlesbrough, Stockton or Hartlepool, is we've been doing this a long time, and actually we're resilient and we know our stuff. It's quite hard to reflect that sometimes, because you talk about the indices of multiple deprivation, but I think we'd rather say, yes, we're in one of the most deprived wards, but we've been doing this for so-and-so, and I know that so-and-so has struggled, and we think this is the answer. So make it from the heart, make it factual, make it from the heart, and make it real. Community members who experience disadvantage. So again, you know, it almost goes without saying really, but it's tough. Where there's a gap, and again, the people that know the gaps will be you guys really, because you know where the gaps are, because that's why you're here really. But that's a strength, and it's about actually highlighting that. We talked about, again, the commitment. Our grant bodies are really, the value's 1,000 to 3,000, and more often than not it's £1,000 to £2,000-ish. And we meet 3 times a year, so you're looking about £30,000 every 3 to 4 months. But those little pots can be really effective. When we talked about new ideas, we should be able to think, okay, let's take a risk on one level. But you're talking about £1,000 or £2,000. Is it a risk? A little bit of a risk. People talk about track records. When you kind of get applications in and you know the organisation and they've been going for 20 years and the accounts are all good and they're in the black and you think they're well run and well governed, that's great, because that gives you the comfort that the money will be used. But also sometimes that little pot of money just goes into the big pot and never really, you know,
does something really.
Yeah, but then again, I know that actually the value of putting the lights on, and so it's kind of that. So we should be prepared to take a level of risk in terms of new and emerging ideas. Independent self-groups, so self-funded groups, again talked about the minds of CB, so we wanted to keep it open to those types of organisations. I think our base, the community-based groups is something that should be in our hearts, that we look to fund. Core costs for short-term projects, talk about experience. So we talked about priorities, clear, new or growing need. Again, that's like a lot of the needs aren't new. A lot of the needs have been going for 20, 30, probably 40 years actually. So it can be the same needs, but it can be growing needs, you know. But it's ambition about empowering people and communities. It's about making a difference. It's entirely about making a difference. So the more you think about how we make a difference and how you can demonstrate that, the better. And you've got the answers. You just need to get it out and go blah, then edit it a little bit. Talk about the smaller communities. Organisations got with limited public profile. I've mentioned when I worked at the Junction. It was easier to fund for young carers than it was to fund for a 19-year-old homeless drug addict. But again, the types of funding is quite good for one-off projects, so it can be small stuff, but building administration costs and things within that. But it's quite handy for that. We talked about new initiatives, novel ideas. an online system, and it's looking alright, and it looks pretty. But we want to know about the type of organisation, your constitution, your legal bits and pieces. That's standard stuff really. Want to know when organisation set up, bit of history, brief description, last 3 years funding in dollars preferably. Stuff like your detailed project start date and previously funded stuff and things like that. So basically basic information, not a huge bit. Want to know description about the project, how it would be delivered, you know, what's your vision for it being delivered. Well, this is easy because I do it in 4 words, but slightly more than that. But how it would be delivered, and importantly, who's the project, who's the beneficiaries, who are the people that are going to benefit from it, how many, where, why is it needed, and what difference will it make? You know, what will be the impact on those people? Talk about us. We didn't need to try and mimic them. And once we did that, and once that penny dropped, our applications got better because they were true and resonated with people. So in terms of, we talked about a little bit about continuation funding. It's hard for us to do, I'll be brutally honest, it's difficult for us to do. You can do it, and we're trying out something. So part of what we wanted to do was to get people to think about the project and the impact it's made, and actually what they've learned. Again, the temptation with funders is to say, oh yes, we were fantastic, we did this, this and this and this, and we met this many people and blah 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 blah. But actually the most important, interesting thing is probably the bit you can do better. And we don't you want to produce that glossy image of we're fantastic because that's what you think funders want. But we really want to find out about what you've learned and what would you do differently next time. It takes a bit of courage to do that because it's quite hard to actually that we could have done that better. But that's what we want to see. So again, what has happened, figures about how many people, that be honest, and then we get some applications that say if you give us this, we'll work with 6 people, but the impact on those 6 people will be this. So it's not all about numbers by any stretch. Have a focus about, when you talk about the difference you make, have a focus on those outcomes. You want to see people that are more confident or better able to get work or can feed the kids, or it's about the difference you make to those people's lives. So always think about outcomes. Issue about why continuation funding. What we don't want to be is perceived to be an easy touch. That's so people just think, oh their life is, we'll get that. I want you to think about stuff. Because I think that's a valuable exercise in itself. So in terms of the process, there's going to be Touchwood, an online application soon. It'll be all those things that have been covered there. Talk about, we have 3 grant meetings per year, so we need to get them in that kind of schedule. The amount, we're a small charity, it's a small pot, 90 to £100,000 a year. At the minute you get a cheque, and that's it. You'll be glad to know. Okay, so I got that.